everybody. Thanks for watching, and thanks for taking the time to purchase and support. And welcome to Meditation Volume 3. And this is not going to be like, a normal meditation type video. We really want to get into some history here to get you guys to understand what will be the possible hindrances to meditation and the history of that, because it's a lot you have to get into to understand why things are the way that it is, and why do they not want meditation to be really experienced the way it should be, and what they are doing to stop that. So the history is the important part, because we're all students of history, and we got to know it. We got to learn it in order to understand why things are where they are. But what I want you guys to take from this is to understand why a lot of you guys in your own right are having problems with meditation, and what those problems are about, or how you can remedy those issues. But you got to know the history. It's, as I talked about before in Meditation 1, in order for you to really understand meditation, you got to take away the spooky part of it and understand, basically the science behind it, or, what you can take from it and put in real physical reality to understand or relate to, in order for you to really grasp it and understand, what it's about and how it really works. So when you get this history, you understand everything behind it and what has been put in place to keep you from really experiencing it. It'll help you really appreciate it more, help you really get in a lot more to it. But, let's get into this. So now, I talked about before how the ancient Egyptians told the Europeans that they needed to come back into melanin. So now, how do we even, come to this conclusion? Now, it's a lot of people who argue that this is something that didn't happen, but it's one of the things you got to understand. Like, everybody came into Kemet to learn. When you go back and you look at all of the ancient civilizations from that time, all melanated people across the world, everybody came into Kemet to learn, to study. The ancient Egyptians taught these people how to basically run their civilizations, and taught them a lot of stuff. Now, when you go look at the ancient civilizations from around that time, we see every melanated civilization grew. Like, they took that knowledge and they did things with it. We see that the Asians grew their civilizations. We see that in India, they grew their civilization. We see down in South America, the civilizations grew. And we look around and we see that it's the same type of teachings in ancient Kemet that we find in these ancient civilizations. We see the same type of symbols, the same type of following that we can see from ancient Egypt. And we see they had the same understanding. When we look across the world, we can find things that identically match up with what we see in ancient Kemet, showing that they must have at some point came into close contact with each other, and basically prove what everybody is saying, that everybody came into Kemet to learn. The only civilization we don't find during this time where everybody is growing, everybody is developing their civilization, the only civilization we do not find, the only people we do not find during this time is the Europeans. White folks. You can go back during this time of ancient Kemet and you don't find a civilization of Europeans developed as the Chinese was, developed as they were in India. You can't show me a place on the planet where we can find ancient ruins that belong to Europeans prior to the fall of ancient Kemet. And this is what you also have to understand. Ancient Rome, ancient Greece were African civilizations. So when we talk about them teaching and them coming into Kemet, Africans as well, came into Kemet to learn from the ancient Egyptians, and they were taught, and everybody took their knowledge back. The only people we do not find growing a civilization as sophisticated as the ancient Egyptians, as sophisticated as the Indians and the Asians, is the Europeans. We do not get a sophisticated European civilization until the conquest of ancient Kemet. When Kemet fell, this is where we eventually start getting the Greek philosophers and everything like that start to come into play after they stole the knowledge from ancient Kemet. So we know the ancient Egyptians taught math, they taught science, they taught about astrology, they taught a lot of things to these people who came in to learn. Now, it was a lot of stuff that you could learn, a lot of stuff that you can have hands-on training with, as far as the ancient Egyptians teaching about, crops and how to basically agriculture, everything like that. They taught everything. The difference was, the mystery school. in order for you to get accepted into the ancient Egyptian the mystery schools, you had to pass a series of tests. It was an initiation process. And the process was even tougher for anybody that wanted to become what the Egyptians call a hem netcher or a hemet netcher, which means a male or female priest. In order to get that deep into the mystery schools, there was a process, and this is where the basis of basically meditation, yoga, chakra work, all this stuff comes from the knowledge and understanding of the healing process of Sikkim. Now, it says here, Egypt was then the cultural center of the world where everyone sought wisdom and learning, and scholars came far and wide to study in the temples. However, few made it through the arduous process of initiation into the priesthood. Some did succeed and took their teachings back to their homelands, where they taught others the sacred art of healing, of mysticism. Over the years, the teachings changed as the teachers developed and grew with their philosophy until each system had its own distinctive feel and energy. Now understand, this process, this test you had to take was a process of understanding how to feel energy. And it was a test that you had to take to prove that you can feel and understand different types of energy. This was a major part in the healing process and understanding how the ancient Egyptians were able to do a lot of stuff that they did. Now, one of the reasons why, of course, that the Europeans couldn't pass this process is because the calcified pineal gland. We also understand that having a lack of melanin played a role in you not being able to understand and pass this part of the initiation process and feeling energy and everything like that. So we know that you had Thales, you had Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, Pythagoras. We had a few ancient Greeks that were allowed to study in the ancient Egyptian mystery schools. A lot of people say, well, they were Greeks. That's another thing you got to understand. A lot of these first, because there is not a long list, and it's something you really got to think about. Remember, we are living in a society that is controlled by the conquerors, not the conquered. So they are telling a false history, and it's up to us to be researchers and go out and to put forward what makes the most sense. And this is clearly one of the things that they hide. The thing is, there are so many reports and depictions that the first Greeks that were initiated into the mystery schools were black or indeed mixed race, mixed black and mixed Greek, or mixed with something else, which is one of the reasons why they were able to pass the initiation process of the Sikkim and prove they were able to feel energy because they were melanated. And this is one of the things that is talked about in the book Black Athena, understanding that the original Greeks were black, of course, before conquest. And it's something I'm going to talk about in the Sacred Science Volume 1 that's coming up. This is a long series that's going to be good. But we're going to get into a lot of this stuff. But we're black. A lot of people know this already. When you look at the depictions we see of Socrates, a lot of people argue a lot of his features were black. And we know, as I said, about Black Athena. And it's so much other things to point to this being so. The reason being, one, is there's only a small amount of Greeks that we could point to that actually made it into this part, the priesthood or the mystery schools of the ancient Egyptians. You would think it would be more. You would think it would have been a lot more information. And then also, you would think if they really got in there and got the knowledge that they need, it would be no need to conquer Kemet. So it's going to make a lot of sense in a second. But yeah, it says here, the origins of ancient Greek civilization. Let's comment on the book by Martin Bernal. It says, Bernal rejects the theory that Greek civilization was founded by Indo-European settlers from Central Europe, which we know is bullshit. That theory, which Bernal calls the Aryan model, which it is, became generally accepted during the 19th century. Bernal defends instead what he calls the ancient model. The name refers to the fact that both Egyptians and Phoenician influences on the Greek world were widely accepted in antiquity. And this is easy for people to understand. One, you had the Aryans come down from the north after the Ice Age or what have you, started to come into what we know as Greece. And you had the Phoenicians there. Eventually, as the Greeks admit themselves, that they were the ones who basically, They got the alphabet from the Phoenicians, which the Phoenicians got the alphabet from the Egyptians because the Phoenicians were Egyptians. A lot of people get confused with the names. These are lazy black people, the Egyptians, Africans, whatever you want to call them. They, of course, was in that area. There's no reason for anybody to think otherwise, because we got to understand, one, if you're talking about Heraklion, which was that port, and we're talking about ancient Egyptians, Northern Africans being in that part of Africa for who knows how long. Of course, they would have, went north. Of course, they would be able to cross the Straits of Gibraltar to get over there from Spain and be in Europe, which they was. And if you ever flew from Egypt to Greece, it's not that far of a flight. It's really quick. You can fly right over there. Sailing, you can see how quick it would be to sail right across that area. It wouldn't take that long at all on a boat. I flew back and forth between the two a few times. It wouldn't take them that long at all. But of course, they was in the area. And when you understand, the wars that happened, and when they came down and started to basically mix in and blend in with the ancient Greeks, how you got these mixed, Africans and Greeks, white people, Aryans, and that's how they were basically infiltrated themselves into ancient Greek society. So understand, the Europeans that were too far from melanin could not be, initiated into the mystery schools. They couldn't get in. They couldn't pass the initiation. They couldn't pass the process. So eventually we know the Aryans, what they would have been called at this point, would go and mix in with every melanated civilization across the planet. And it's something you got to think of, connect the dots. You're in Kemet. You cannot get this information. You can't get into the deeper parts of the mystery school. So you remember that, well, wait a minute, these other races of people, these other groups of Africans, these other people who came into Kemet to learn, well, they got initiated. They got in. Let's go to these people and see if we can get in, which they couldn't get in as well. The mystery schools, even still, they taught what they taught, but it's not 100% clear exactly what the ancient Egyptians taught them or how much they taught them, but we can see from the structures and, what they have in these civilizations, like, in China and down in South America. It's amazing information that they must have learned from the ancient Egyptians. So they went to basically try to learn from them. They couldn't get in. They mixed in with everybody. They mixed in with, Chinese. Came into India and basically took over and mixed in with them for a while. And we understand the whole concept. I talked about this in a Buddhism series about what happened once the Aryans came in and how they basically claimed they created Hinduism, Buddhism, or what have you. And a lot of this was going on. So we have to look at this. And again, you have to understand, we go look around the world. We see during this time, we see melanated civilizations showing us the same type of knowledge and information that we see in ancient Kemet. And we see that there is a comparison of the knowledge all around the world as it is in ancient Kemet. And we know that these people came into study and were taught by the ancient Egyptians, which everybody talks about. But then you see nothing from white folks until the fall of Kemet. Something to think about and piece this together. You also have to understand them not being where they need to be at physically. They couldn't really understand spirituality. They couldn't really understand what the ancient Egyptians was talking about or why certain things was even important. Imagine trying to get into this mystery school and you can't grasp the fact that you can't get in because of something that you should be able to do that these other people are able to do. They couldn't understand it. They couldn't wrap their head around it. And I'm going to show you guys in the Sacred Science series about, one of the reasons why this was possible, and also how Greek mythology, and this is another big thing. We talk about Homer and a lot of the ancient Greek writers back then. You got to think about who these people really was. So I'm going to show you guys how, when we're talking about Greek mythology, when we're talking about all these characters, Zeus and Zeus and Prometheus and all these other people, that the pantheon of Greek mythology, these people, these beings were created by the Black Greeks, which makes a lot more sense to me when you understand what we're going to get into. they created these Greek gods. And it's going to be hard for people to accept this. But again, one of the questions you got to ask yourself, if you created, the pantheon of Greek mythology, I'm talking about the Greek gods, powerful as they is, all the stories, the mythologies and everything, if you created them, why would you then later, if you're trying to, bring people into the understanding of the whole Hellenization process, the whole Greek process. Now, as I talked about before, we know the ancient Egyptians understood a lot of it, but it makes more sense to understand that if these people that they were trying to force this stuff on understood it, but the reason why they understood it is because they created it. That makes a lot more sense, and that's exactly what it was. So think about it. If you're trying to push Greek culture, the Greek gods, onto civilizations of people, why would you not then use the pantheon of Greek gods if you created them? Why would you create Serapis? Why would you then go and dress like Egyptians instead of dressing like Greeks if you are the Greeks that created these powerful Greek gods? Think about that. If you have Hermes and Zeus and all these powerful Greek gods that's supposed to be white in your image that you created, why would you not push them as being the face, the forefront of your Greek religion? Think about that. Now, when we come in out of Greece, remember later the Greeks, if you look in Greece, what are they talking about? What are they worshiping? They're not worshiping Zeus. These Greeks is religious. They're Christians and Jews and Muslims. They're not into Greek mythology. They're not following the pantheon of the Greek gods that they supposedly created. Makes more sense when you begin to understand. But we're going to get into that in sacred science. But you got to look at that and understand, creating Serapis and why it would make more sense for them to go ahead and double cross and stab the Egyptians in the back who did so much for them. It will make more sense. I mean, everything starts to come together when you think about the Egyptians helping to build the Temple of Delphi and the Temple of Zeus. It makes more sense them taking the time to do this if they were the ones that created it in the first place, black people. And why then, when it was destroyed, the Greeks never rebuilt it. It's still in ruins. They never tried to fix it. It's still in ruins. During the entire Hellenization process, they do not push these Greek gods. They don't push them across to everybody to try to force it onto the people. It's Serapis. It's something entirely different from what you would expect if you came up with the pantheon of Greek gods and Greek mythology. So now it's funny when you go back and start to understand the Greeks after the fall of Kemet, once they conquered and how they ruled and how they set up their civilization, and that their whole thing, their whole philosophy about, Greece and how they was going to run everything was based on rationality. What makes sense? What's the best thing to do? What makes sense? And anybody that's basing stuff off of, rationality, what makes sense, shows you one that they don't have a sense of spirituality. Now, when you take something that should be dealt with on a spiritual level and you don't deal with it spiritually at all, instead you attack it on a rational level, you change the energy of that spirituality. You change the energy of spirituality into something else. And for the Greeks, what they did, they basically changed the energy of spirituality into the energy of materialism, because to them, stuff didn't make sense to do so for spiritual purposes, when to them, survival and everything that really was important had to do with material. Eat, build, stay warm, so on and so forth. So it's like, what is the point of doing this to cultivate what? If I can't grasp something spiritually, I got to worry about the physical, what I can experience, what's going on right now. So they basically based everything on the rational level of materialism. And in doing so, they created this energy of materialism. And we see that's exactly how everything basically began to spiral with them and begin to take shape as far as them building and going forward the way they went, them fighting over the lands the way they went. I mean, just think about it. It was like you had an organized process for a long time, and once they finally took over, they couldn't control themselves. The Wars of the Diadochi shows you there wasn't a spiritual process in sight. They killed each other. They didn't really care about anything. You had them come together. They couldn't rationally, separate the land. They was thinking about materialism. This is mine. I want this. This is better. And they fought and killed each other over our lands. So within their own frequency and atmosphere, they created this energy of materialism and began to basically conquer North Africa and the lands that was, formerly the ancient Egyptian empire. But now I'm going to read from Dark Light Consciousness about this particular point. And this is saying here, over the centuries, as our ancestral tribes migrated and crisscrossed the earth, interacting with local climate and ecology, the pineal gland has undergone varying forms of influence. In the northern climates of Europe, the pineal gland experienced some degree of calcification. There is less calcification among people of Asia, and the least amount of pineal gland calcification among people of more direct African background. This may have implications for mankind's experience of spirituality. I've been talking about this for a long time. Some researchers speculate that there is an association with pineal gland calcification and humankind's gradual descent into the world of both materialism and materialist philosophy. This is suggested because the pineal gland is universally associated from Descartes to Kemet with the capacity to subtly see the literal and spiritual light within us. As we move more into the material realm and lose more of our capacity for sensitivity to these realms, there is increasing pineal gland calcification. So the more material you are, the more your pineal gland calcifies because you're not spiritual. We are now at the point in our collective history where we are so deeply embedded in materialism that large numbers of us even doubt the existence of a spiritual reality itself, let alone the connection between the pineal gland and the capacity to see within. The present materialist world order is an abject rejection of every traditional and spiritual institution from the peoples of Africa, India, Europe, the Middle East, and Mesoamerica. Our age is currently the most materialistic of any in the memory of the world, which I agree. We calculate the timeless orbit of the stars, yet fail to see the eternal cycle within our own souls. And this is exactly what I have come to suspect, and you have as well. It's a lack of empathy, something that we all talk about. How can you do the things that we have seen these people do across the planet for centuries? Enslave people, starve children to death. The things we've seen with 9/11, blowing up children in foreign countries and bringing buildings down on these people. It's a lack of empathy. It's clearly there. And there is a true love of materialism that we see with the Europeans. I mean, just look at everything that we've been seeing. I mean, look at the system they created. It's designed and created, to be basically, servant to money. Material, gold. If you got this material thing, you can be at a certain level. Everything that we are following has to do with materialistic stuff. It's very little spirituality, and they created a whole spiritual situation with religion that's really, it's really designed to basically make you want more material. I mean, it's giving you problems. It's causing conflict within yourself. But we look at how materialistic this stuff is. If you ever watch, I always talk about Mecum, the car auction, how these people can watch people starve to death in the street, kids starving to death, but go and bid, $1 million on the car that they're not really going to drive. We see this all the time. It's materialism. Everything is based off of it. How these people can basically, if you ever watch the show American Pickers, I talked about, these people be having, very expensive, rare cars and bikes and a lot of items that they don't want to part with, at all. They don't want to let it go. Dude come in there and be offering them all kinds of crazy money. I don't want to sell. It is more love in the material than it is, for the person. We see that how they are with animals because it's something that they can control. They love dogs more than they love humans. They love animals more than they love humans. They'll let a human, they'll march up and down the street for animal rights. right next to a bunch of homeless people that starving to death on the street. So how was you putting so much time and effort and organization into, animals than human people that you can help and put back on their feet quickly? But they don't do it. There's more love for the animal because it's something that they can control and possess. Plain and simple. We see that with materialism and everything. Everything that they do. It's a materialistic, world that they live in, and everything is based off of that. And it just seems to be more important than true spirituality. And we see that it's so. To put the value, so much value in materialistic things, and to base a society off of material rather than spirituality is something, that you gotta not have any feeling for in order to do so. That's why I talked about before how we see black people in church getting the Holy Spirit, the so-called Holy Ghost, and, getting real spiritual. The same stuff we see in voodoo. We never seen Europeans do this. Never seen white folks do this. We never see them get that emotional, that feeling when it has to do with spirituality as it pertains to, energy, religion, anything. That spirituality is not there. And we see how it's falsified with people like, Benny Hinn and all these people, these television evangelists that go around fraud and faking it for the money. Because that's basically what it's about. Everything that they do, the reason why they are in the position they are in and structured the way they are, because they put more energy into the material than spirituality. We are way more rational and more understanding because we're like, it's not that serious. I'm not going to pay all this money for no car. I'm not going to pay all this money for that. And it's what they're changing within us, as you can see with hip hop culture. But it's deep when you really start to think about it. It makes a lot of sense when he's talking about the calcification of the pineal gland and how it directly has to do with the lack of empathy and you wanting more material and being more caught up in a materialistic realm. Now, again, I know it's a lot of people who don't like to talk about melanin and they don't get caught up in that whole conversation. A lot of people think we just make too much of it. They don't understand the importance of it. So as I showed before with Dr. Carl Marat talking about chagas, I want you to watch this clip and understand how important it is.
In fact, there's somebody even studying that and wondering whether energy is directly absorbed from the melanin in your skin and transformed into energy in your body. Okay? And they even think about could in the future, and they're developing this now, they're taking melanin and making batteries out of them that store energy from the sunlight directly. It might in fact become a future source of how we're going to generate energy. Now, let's get back with that little bit of physics background. Let's talk about melanin inside chaga and melanin inside the body. So it absorbs thousands of times more electromagnetic radiation actually than chlorophyll does. And chlorophyll is what we need to make proteins and sugars, especially sugars in the body. It exists in many other tissues, as I mentioned. It's actually a very important molecule in any woman who's having a baby, because the fetus has all this melanin in it, as I'll show you. Okay? And it's thought to be, by some people, a master molecule that actually steers how the body communicates. For example, Frank Barr, a scientist, wrote a whole article, a whole issue of a journal called Medical Hypothesis, saying, melanin is such a special molecule and it's found in the babies, it may have a major role in steering things in the body, in the whole regulatory system. Melanin's role in embryological organization, that's in the baby's organization, and tissue repair and tissue regeneration, may be connected to the major role that it plays to balance the body, that's called homeostasis, in the autonomic, neuroendocrine, and immunological system. So in other words, melanin may play a much bigger role than just absorbing all this radiation, and when you get it into your body, it actually has a major effect on your immune system. Here's a picture of a baby at 35 days of pregnancy, and this is the eye of an embryo inside a mother. It's a very tiny little thing. Notice that the eye is pure melanin. That's an amazing picture, isn't it? To see all this melanin is inside, and when the embryo first forms, there is what's called the dark streak. It's all melanin. Okay, here's an example of a plant. It's an eggplant that has melanin in it, and a genetically changed one that is no melanin in it. Notice the size of the two difference. I mean, this is an indirect indication that melanin, directly can transduce energy in the vegetable kingdom. Now, the body is a living matrix, and you really want to get this because this is kind of part of the operating system of your body. And I know that as we're talking about it, you really have to strain a little bit to stay with me, but I think it'll make some sense here. The body is actually a communication system where everything is connected to everything else, and it works through light. It works through light. It's called biophotons. And in this communication system, cells have connections to other cells called integrins, and electrons and light flows between cells. So it's like a supercomputer. Your body is like a supercomputer, and the skin is connected to every other part of the body.
So now, as I pointed out before, one of the things he is clearly not saying in that video is that Africans already possess an abundance of melanin. So all the stuff I'm telling you that you're going to have problems with if you don't have this Chagas or have this melanin, the blacks, the Africans will not have this problem. They produce it naturally. It's all over them. Their organs are secreting in it. They have pure melanin all over, so they won't have these problems. So that's something you got to think about. It's a major imbalance. It's a big problem going on that they will not tell Europeans, they will not tell white folks about this stuff to really make sense of their issues. And it's one of the things I talked about before. You got to understand, before we was all on TV, and before we was even really allowed to be free and do all the stuff we was doing, crime was everywhere. It was all over the place. I talked about Dragnet and 1 Adam 12 and how it was showing only white folks on or committing all these crimes. Plain and simple. This is what was going on. This is what is a destructive society. And I believe that they were worried and scared that the people would eventually take over. Because at every point, just go back and look. Every time this government has put a law in place against these white folks, they said, fuck that shit. We go back to Prohibition. You had a whole crime organization across the country going against this government because of Prohibition, because they wanted their booze. They wanted that material possession. So Prohibition happened, and they basically had to end up saying, okay, we got to side with the people and make it legal because this crime is getting out of hand. It's the same thing with the mob. Look at what the mob did. They went against the government. They had organized crime because they say, you know what, this whole thing is a scam. It's about materialism. This stuff, these people is getting stuff. We supposed to sit around and work and be under their fucking thumb while they're making all this money. We got to sit back and really work for this system. They understood it. So the mob did what they did. They went out and took until eventually they got with the program and they got organized and they had enough material possession and enough money to possess what they wanted. They put themselves in a position of power. It's exactly the MO of what these people do. So when they seen that this was going to keep happening, they had to flip the switch. And it's going to make a lot of sense as we go on. It's one of the reasons why they knew they had to allow us to mix, because they had to get melanin in these people to try to control and change that mindset. It was a destructive mindset, and it's not too much stuff they could have got over on the people with. After a while, the people would have took over. You can go back in history and look at how many kings got their head cut off or got killed by the people because they wasn't treating the people right. It has nothing to do with how much we love you and how you are a king. If you treat them right, treat them wrong, and fuck them on their material possessions, they're going to kill you. Just that simple. Can't mess with their money. They're going to kill you. All the rioting and marching and everything like that. You start messing with their material stuff, it's going to be a problem. So we can clearly see there are effects to having little to no melanin. And one of the things you understand is having little melanin in the brain is one of the biggest issues, one of the biggest things that's going on. So your brain has basically this coating of melanin. And where that melanin is in the brain is really rich in iron, which we know iron is a metal. And you have your brain waves that's basically creating this electromagnetic radiation, which is basically producing an electromagnetic field, the brain. I talked about this before, how you have an electromagnetic field from the heart and from the brain as well. So now, because of this iron and because of these brain waves, your brain can basically be influenced by, magnets, by magnetism. So magnets or electromagnetic frequencies, at certain frequencies, can have effects on the brain. They have this whole process to where they actually treat patients using magnets. It's called transcranial magnetic stimulation. And it says here, transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS, is a non-invasive procedure that uses magnetic fields to stimulate nerve cells in the brain to improve symptoms of depression. TMS is typically used when the other depression treatments haven't been effective. Now also it says here, powerful demonstrations of how magnets can affect your brain. Magnetic fields can improve your memory and even control your behavior and sense of morality. This video shows just how strongly they can affect your brain. New Scientist editor Roger Highfield's recitation of Humpty Dumpty is interrupted by magnetic interference. I'm not going to go through the video, but basically he's singing Humpty Dumpty and a magnetic field basically goes off and he can't sing it no more. Now we've seen this before, and a lot of people don't understand about how this stuff works. But we've seen this a lot if you think about all of the mass shootings, because this works more on Europeans, on white folks, because they have less melanin to protect them from these magnets. So basically, the more melanin you have, the more that field or the power of the magnet will not be able to penetrate the melanin, because it's so much iron in there, there's a lot going on, it can't really affect your brain as much as it can for a person who has less melanin. So because they don't have as much, they can be more easily affected by that process. So we see a lot of white folks have depression. It's one of the ways they treat them. One, as I said, unconventional ways do not work. But also we got to look at the whole Manchurian candidate thing, and it's one of the things that we got to look at, and one of the things the movie tried to show you. So we have all these mass shootings, and it's been happening every time. And the reason why every time we see these mass shootings as a white person is because they can control their brain. As it said, it can control your levels of empathy. It can control your moods. It can make you do stuff that you do not want to do. And who knows how far along with it they are. But we keep seeing these people flip out, seemingly flip out, and do the stuff they've done. And this is the program a lot of people talk about that they have, the whole MK Ultra mind control, and so many things we heard that a lot of people think is spooky, but the science is there, which proves that this is possible. So if you remember, from the Manchurian Candidate movie first, you had Denzel in that movie. He kept waking up from it. He kept snapping out of it. He was trying to figure out what was going on. And, we know what happened. But we've seen this in real life with Aaron Alexis. Remember the dude with the whole Navy Yard shooting. They kept showing the video of him walking around with the gun. And he was talking about, before it even happened, how they were trying to control his mind with this microwave weapon. And it's one of the cases where it seems as if they was trying to control him. He kept snapping out of it. And he was running from these people. And eventually, he went in to work. He was supposed to be a civilian contractor. Went into the Navy Yard. Didn't check him, the metal detectors or what have you, which is weird. But supposedly he went on a shooting spree, killed like 12, 13 people. And he was saying the whole time they were trying to control his brain. Now, what was really happening with that situation was he snapped out of it. Nobody's going to know what happened when he got in that building, but notice they do not show one video of him shooting anybody. You can go on YouTube right now and see people shooting each other. That video is not shown with him actually shooting and killing people. Now, the whole rumors of when the helicopter supposedly landed and came in, there's a lot of people saying that they were the execution squad. They came in, was killing people, and killed him and blamed it on him to push this whole thing that I guess they wanted to try to see if I don't know what the purpose of that was, to show that he can be controlled, or that it can be a black shooter other than white shooters. I don't know what was the purpose of that, but clearly we can't hold that kind of mind control the way that white people can. So that's one of the things you got to look at and see. We can see clearly, something is wrong. Something is not right with that whole process, and just the thought, the mental capacity of these people, and how they've been thinking for centuries, how everything is just so, even with slavery, people saying, okay, y'all sold yourselves into slavery. That's a person who has no empathy at all, who can't really just grasp that it don't matter who sold who. The people who were actually slaves are not asked to be in that position. So for people to boldly say you sold yourselves into slavery and just forget everything that happened after the fact, it's unempathetic people. To do what these people have done, Pearl Harbor, 9/11, the whole Oklahoma City bombing, the mass shootings, it's no empathy. It's clear as day, and it's something that we've seen for a long time, and it fits into this whole process. And as I said in the beginning, this is something that you're going to see kind of sort of deviate from meditation, but it's going to make a lot of sense as we go along. And it's something that you really have to understand, as I said, the history of this, for you to break out of the spell, the mind control that they have it over you, which we're going to talk about towards the end, because you're under it. And a lot of people are, and it's one of the reasons why they're never going to get where they need to be in a meditative state, because it's all this doubt and everything they've created to put you where they are. So as I said before, when I first started putting these videos out, that everything is about us, plain and simple. Everything is about us. So when you go and look, as I said, look at the ancient world and look at how everybody was doing the same thing. All these melanated civilizations was united in spirituality. The same stuff. As I showed you, all the depictions we see in Kemet, we see in Asia, we see in Mesopotamia, we see in South America, we see in Mesoamerica, we see in so many different places where it's the same type of symbolism drew a different way by those people by talking about the same stuff. You had the way the ancient Egyptians put it, you had the way the Mesoamericans put it, and the way the Sumerians put it, the way the Asians put it, but it's talking about the same thing. You came into Kemet, they taught you this information as what we've seen in Greece. They taught the Greeks this information. The Greeks came up with a pantheon of Greek mythology to basically mimic off of the Egyptian gods, so on and so forth with the Asians, so on and so forth. But again, we do not see this from Europeans. We don't see the structures and everything we see with everybody else around the world until the conquest of ancient Kemet. And the stuff that they gave us was more dealing with materialism and the false religion they created to control what they have been controlling, thus far. So we look at that and we got to understand all this stuff came from Kemet. It was passed down, it was taught, as I talked about before, how Buddhism started in ancient Kemet. I'm going to read right here. It says, Buddhism in ancient Egypt and Meroe, beliefs revealed through ancient script. Did Buddhism exist in Upper Egypt and the Lower Meroitic Empire? The answer appears to be yes. It was in Memphis that English Egyptologist and archaeologist W.M. Flanders Petrie found evidence of a Buddhist colony. Now, I get into all this in Buddhism DVDs, so definitely check out those videos for more information on this. But it's important to understand this, because when we look in ancient India, we see meditation. We see meditation in ancient Kemet. You look at all these statues. You look at all these examples of meditation. And the one that we seen the most growing up was every time I had to do with meditation or spirituality, it was usually from the Asians. You've seen Buddha meditating before anybody else. They always showed the Asians. They didn't show you these much older ancient Egyptian statues because they resemble black folks. They didn't show you this stuff. And we look at all these statues. We look at the fact that still to this day, you have Asians coming back to Kemet. You have Indians coming back to Kemet to meditate, to feel that energy, because it's still there, it still exists. Egypt being under one of those powerful ley lines of energy. And they come back because they understand the true history and where it began. The people who know go back. The people who know give the credit and understand how important Kemet was and everything they did for the ancient world, and how they really was the foundation for the beginning of many civilizations. It all goes back to them. We go back to ancient Kemet, we see all these postures and poses and everything that would resemble what we see today as far as yoga. I talked about this in Buddhism about how Bodhidharma, he went to Asia and was working with the Asians, and he noticed they couldn't hold the meditative position for a long time. And he taught them what he learned in Kemet about the postures, the many poses that we see from the ancient Kemet. Still, when we look at a lot of depictions and reliefs, we see these same poses and postures. And that whole training allowed them to, one, stay in meditative position for so long, but out of those positions and stances, just as the Egyptians did, they were able to basically come up with Shaolin teachings and Shaolin Kung Fu from the teachings of Bodhidharma, which he got the teachings from ancient Kemet. And this is how this stuff began. Now, this is all important because, one, Dr. Edward Bynum talks about in Dark Light Energy Consciousness about the energy of the earth. The energy of the earth and how the earth has this circulating, rotation of energy that basically circulates, around the earth from the North Pole to the South Pole. Talked about this before in a Saturn and Satan, I believe. But it's this energy that's basically circulating. And it's called the Kundalini energy of the earth when you basically start getting into it. But it's this energy that basically surrounds the earth and it's rotating. And at intersecting points, you have these ley lines. It's like power, like where they intersect at, you have these ley lines where you basically have powerful points of energy coming together. And they call it the Becker-Hagen's grid, scientists. But at these points of energy, we have, the pyramids, monuments, and stuff like that, as I've talked about before. So now, when you're looking at the postures and poses that the ancient Egyptians was teaching, this has to do with Kundalini energy. It has to do with basically strengthening your own energy so that eventually you can align with the earth's energy and heal yourself. This is what they was talking about, the ancient Egyptians, how you can feel energy and how you can feel this energy developing within yourself so that you can connect with the planet, so you can heal yourself. And then once you heal yourself, eventually from that point, you'll be able to tap into the earth's information, the knowledge of the planet. And it's something they talked about, the ancients, a lot. And it's one of the things we see with animals, we see with birds. They tap into the earth's electromagnetic energy and they can, that's how they know how to fly south. That's how they know the migration patterns. Turtles, I talked about this before with the loggerhead turtles, how they can lay eggs on one beach and go away for 100 years and come right back to that beach, after they're born. So basically that's how it goes. So basically when they lay those eggs, those turtles that's born, they're born. They just came out of the eggs. They already know how to get into the water. And from the birth, the whole time that they're in that egg, they establish this connection with the earth. And they know by the time they leave, they know exactly where to come back and lay eggs in that same spot where they was born. It's something that's amazing. But we can look at so many different animals having this connection to the earth's energy. And it's something that we know must be true when we look at some of the amazing things that these animals are able to do. But it's something that we were able to do that we can't do no more because of, everything that happened. But this is one of the things they was talking about with meditation, is being able to tap into this energy. So once you tap into this energy, once you are healed and you are in the right state energetically, how you can tap into this information field and how the ancient Egyptians talked about how eventually you can leave the body and go out through this opening that's supposed to be this opening in the North and South Pole. Your energy can go out, through this safe area and travel, astral travel. And whenever you see the depictions of them on the solar boats, this is exactly what they're talking about. They're talking about them traveling through space. And this is something that they must have been able to do. And the reason why we say that is because, one, how did they know how the earth looked from above? How did they know the layout, the shapes of the planet? There's no evidence that these people had planes or anything like that, but they knew the layout, how it looked. They knew about the constellations. They knew about the planets. How could they know about Saturn and the moons? How could they know about the alignment of the planet versus with the sun, the position where the earth was? How could they know about Andromeda star system? How could they know about Sirius? How could they know about any of this stuff without seemingly having any kind of modern technology as far as telescopes and so on and so forth? It's something they must have been able to do. They was able to go out there and see it and be out there and travel. And when you understand about this energy field, it's supposed to stretch out through the entire universe, and we are supposed to be able to tap into it. Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. And you understand how if you have a people that once you conquer Kemet and you find out the extent of what the Egyptians was able to do and what they were trying to remember how to do, you got to stop these people at all costs. And how, they got the other races of people to buy in, they mixed in with them. You have the people in Thailand talked about when I was down there. The indigenous people was the Mani. They black like us. Afros, the whole nine. But you had these people, same thing in China, Japan, the indigenous people, black, dark. But even still, once the Aryans came and mixed in, you have these people become willing to basically destroy and leave the ancient ruins of their ancestors, to leave that all behind, to trace after what the white folks is chasing after, to trace after materialism. So we see, the Asians, if the sun is out, they got an umbrella. They don't want to get dark. They have made the image of power, of melanin, into an evil thing. So you're seeing all the dark gods, as I said in one of my videos, all the dark gods are gone and enter the white gods. We have the Thai people painting the faces of the Buddhas, pale white, and we see this whole worship of whiteness in Asia, and all of the dark-skinned gods is gone. And that's because when they mixed in, it's this changing of energy from real spirituality, which we look at a lot of Asians and we see them as spiritual people and having spiritual understanding. That's fine within the people, but within the government, it's material, it's control, it's a materialistic thought. It's really far away from true spirituality. And it's some kind of deal they must have made, and some kind of understanding they had to basically come to the agreement that we can't allow black folks to basically, get to this point or do what they've been trying to do. So again, we got to think about it. As I said before, after whatever catastrophe happened on this planet, these Africans knew to go north. They knew to go to Kemet. And it's the same way how, the loggerhead turtle knows how to go back to where it was first born, how these birds know where to fly at, and how to follow the Earth's energy to get to certain points of around the globe. Seals and all these animals, so many animals that use the Earth's energy to figure out how to do some amazing stuff. So it seems as if those Africans still, they knew where to go. They was tapped into the energy back then. They knew how to get there. But, Edward Bynum talks about in this book here, he says, this geomagnetic and electromagnetically generated field passing upward and over the surface of the Earth is believed to create a grid of electromagnetic and gravitational intertwined lines of force. Some esoteric systems claim that they extend into space beyond the Earth in a planetary grid system, the Becker-Hagen's grid they talk about. These subtle lines of force were actively perceived by the ancients to be a kind of living nervous system of energy for the Earth, similar to the meridian energy of chi lines of the body in acupuncture. Temples, churches, and eventually graveyards were historically aligned with these perceived lines of force. They were also perceived to be aligned with the natural markers and monuments on the surface of the Earth. Over the millennia, they became the fabled spirit pathways navigated or followed by the dead, shamans, and OBE experiences as they moved along them and the Earth in spiritual flight. Something similar to this occurs in the homing mechanism of birds. As I talked about, certain birds appear to use magnetoreception in the body and brain to orient themselves to subtle magnetic fields along the Earth that guide their navigation over great distances. We believe that this same electromagnetic field is reflected in both the Earth and the vaster, more subtle, and more complex human brain, and that it arises naturally in humans' perception. If this can be true for the brain's orientation to subtle electromagnetic and gravitational forces and along the Earth's surface, then it can be extended to the perception of our Earth's alignment with the stellar structures of the galaxy. How else do we biologically account for the awareness and precise observation by three different ancient civilizations of the galactic alignment of the Earth and the plane of our galaxy, the Milky Way? Exactly, that's another thing. How the hell they know about the Milky Way? They couldn't get out there and see it. The measurements of the Great Year and other scientific feats without the aid of telescopes thousands of years ago, in some way human consciousness interacts with these energy fields within the space-time continuum. Now leave it right there. So we look at this and we see all this history and evidence of the destruction, the enslavement, and the genocide of melanated people across the planet, to be basically massacred. Every accomplishment that we had, and I'm gonna get into this more in Ancient History, Volume 6, the new Ancient History series that's coming out with this one. But we're gonna talk about this a lot more because a lot is deep. A lot of people don't understand and know that's gonna make a lot of sense in that series as well. But this goes along with it to get you to understand one of the reasons why they had to do all this, as I talked about before. But again, it's one of those things where you start connecting dots and you start seeing the fact that these people, they couldn't get into the mystery schools. And it's one of the things I said before. It's like, you have all these other civilizations coming out and doing great things on a major par, creating their own identity for themselves, like the Asians, creating their own identity for themselves, like down in Mesoamerica, down the same thing with the Olmecs. They have amazing stuff, monuments that's amazing in their own right, except for the Europeans. They're the only ones that don't have it. And it's one of the things that if you have a materialistic mind and you look around the world, you see all these other people that have such an amazing, civilization. And you telling me I basically got to die and come back in order for me to have that? I got to die and turn into you and become melanated and all this and that in order for me to have it. It wasn't rational for them to understand it. And they didn't think about it in the spiritual term, only as material. So having that brute mindset, they conquered. And they went on a conquering spree. They couldn't help themselves. They couldn't stop. So they went out and conquered as much African land as they could. They went and took everything. They created an entire system based on conquest. We have not ever seen an African civilization do such a thing. We haven't seen the Asians do such a thing. We haven't seen the Mexicans do such a thing. Everybody has had their civilization conquered and disturbed in some type of way by Europeans. When they went over to China to try that, it was the Huns who got rid of them. And we're seeing the same thing still to this day. America intervening in so many different things around the world. It's been the same thing for thousands of years. We're going to talk about this in Ancient History, the next Ancient History video. But we see it. People minding their business. Indigenous people minding their business. Spiritual people. Conquest. Colonization. Colonialism. We see all of this. It's conquest. Melanated people living spiritually, doing well, had their shit taken over. So we've seen it in Africa. We've seen it down in South America. We've seen it in America. We've seen this whole conquest that they have, having this mindset, and still to this day. The conquest has been going on. We've seen through slavery and the stuff that these people have done, feeding, babies to alligators. This is something that an empathetic people could do. Anybody with any type of empathy cannot do such a thing or have such, such hate for people for seemingly no reason. But when you understand the history, you understand what could be going on, it makes a lot of sense. And it's something that a lot of people are not going to understand because they can't really put it together. And it's going all the way back to the beginning. Before ancient Kemet, during the time of ancient Kemet, you can't show me a civilization where they was on par with the Egyptians or any other melanated people on this planet. Not until conquest. When they conquered, then they got the stuff. It just makes all the sense in the world and everybody can see it. And the fact that these people have control over history in the history books, they can make it as if it's something different. But at the same time, because of universal law, they're giving you the truth. It's right there. You can see it clear as day. They took those Greek gods and gave them white faces and started creating statues and everything after the fact. So when you look at how old Greek mythology is, it's one of the things you got to think about. You don't see statues, during that time, the beginning of it. So you're talking about, 1000 BCE and Iliad and Odyssey by Homer. Where is all this stuff? We see this later. We start seeing these statues and this stuff later. And we start seeing the white faces and everything. The whole image of Zeus and everything is later. It's after conquest. It all makes sense. And it's important because when you understand now about that type of mindset, and what's going on, and how at every point these people want to hinder you from ever being able to make that type of connection, to not be able to make that spiritual connection, to be able to actively meditate. So what did they do? They have effectively began to turn us into them. When you look at it, it's exactly what's happening. They have been weakening us genetically with food and everything they've been doing to us. Stuff they spraying, the chemicals that's in everything in the hair, their hair gel, everything they have to do with anything that black person use. You can find something that's probably going to harm you. And it's crazy because they have been trying to turn us into them, to put us on the same par as them spiritually. And it's working. It's been working. So you have us basically chasing a materialistic God and follow materialism. So again, we living in a hip hop culture that is based on materialism. Everything is about getting that bag, getting the money, having this and having that. And people are more emotionally attached to these artists than they are to their own spirituality, to their own selves, their own energy. And as I said, the Bible is giving you the whole metaphor on all of that. If you don't love yourself, you don't love God, because that's who you are. Plain and simple. So you love these material possessions and these actors and a lifestyle more than you love yourself, because you're willing to basically destroy yourself, your energy, the true part that really matters, the part of you that you're going to have to really deal with for eternity. You rather destroy that for 15 minutes of fame, for a car or what have you. So this is what they have effectively done. And this is what we got to watch out for. So I could have easily given you guys a video about how to sit down and be quiet. And it would have been real simple to do that. You can do that on your own. Nobody can show you true meditation. You have to have the mindset and the understanding about everything that this is that it entails, because it has to be real to you. And when they created that energy of materialism, it's still here. When they converted that energy, I should say, a spirituality into materialism, it's still here, and it's affecting us all. It's affecting everybody. We are materialistic people, and it's one of the things that you can have control of that, or you won't. Plain and simple. And one of the things that we do is we live beyond our means. We can't afford stuff. We get it anyway. It's one of the reasons, I always talk about with personal economics, why you have to be financially free. And when you really grasp that now, it makes a lot of sense understanding these people. So we're going to put you in a system where it's going to be based on your success. So if you're successful, you can go ahead and be truly free, because it's the only way you're going to really have freedom, is if you're successful. And with that freedom, it'll buy you the ability to be able to really truly meditate and to be free. Or you can just simply choose to get away from it all. To say, forget it all, get away from it. Like the Bible tells you, do not do what the world is doing. Don't love the world. Basically, stay away from this stuff. Love of the Father is not going to be in you. So you have that choice to just walk away from it all and go be spiritual and just live a spiritual life. But that energy that they converted, that spiritual energy they converted into materialism, is within you. And it's affecting everybody. And that materialistic energy, it's what has you stuck and more willing to do whatever you need to do to get more materialistic stuff. And that's what we are. That's where we sit today. And, my reason and making this part 3, which it'll be another part, of course, was because of that. The most questions I get about meditation is how it's not working. And people don't understand, because you have the energy of, doubt that they created, they put in you. You have the energy of materialism that's in you, because when you're meditating, materialistic stuff is popping up in your head. Bills, stuff you got to do, stuff you want to do. It's materialism. Your time, everything. I got to have time because I got to go do this. I got to go to work. I got to make money because I got to buy material stuff. I got to pay for this. And it's a conundrum. It's a problem that's created within you. And it's all done to hinder you from that power, from that connection. If you actually really truly understood how you can meditate and connect to the power of the planet, we're the only people that can do it. It's only us. As I said, it's all about us. They can't do shit. They won't never be able to. They can't do it. We can. And it's taking control of the consciousness of the planet. They have the Africans, the true original people, worshiping false gods and killing each other, calling their own ancient spirituality, their real power, voodoo and evil and witchcraft. True power that these people possess. They burn them on fire, set people on fire because they practicing this real power. That's how bad it's gotten. It's gotten real bad, and I don't think people understand how deep it is. When you get to that point, when you really start getting into meditation, you start feeling it, when you know it's real, when you start being conscious in the dream state, when you see things changing, and you know that you got this power, that where can it go? Like, how much better can it get? You're hooked. You stay focused on that. And it's one of the things that I just hope everybody get a chance to get to this point, that they can put the dedication and time into meditation so they can understand what it can truly do for them. We got to look at all the stuff that they made us hate. Hate your darkness, melanin, hate your skin. We're going to create all these words, bad words, and put, black terms into it, like, black ball. They got this whole commercial now with the dark web. Why has it got to be dark? All these subliminal messages that blackness is bad. You got black people not even wanting to be black. It's crazy. It's the people who don't want to be themselves. They don't want to associate with Africa. They don't want to associate with Kemet. They want to just, fall in line with this materialistic society that they created, while they try to get your power and turn you into them. And they have effectively done it. They have done it. We are so materialistic. It's like you said in the book. This is the most, materialistic civilization in the history of the world. Plain and simple. Spirituality is non-existent. It's a joke to a lot of people. And a lot of people don't grasp so much stuff. I talked about in the Crystals DVD, if you really understood that, everything in us, the same stuff, it's everywhere. It's what you are made of. Everything is made of the same stuff. So it's, organic, if you want to say, if you will. But think about the structures back then. All the structures they used and they built back then, brick, mud, or what have you, it had to do with energy. It had to be with being surrounded by the earth. Plain and simple. It's a natural thing. It's something that don't need to be, constructed and changed and mutilated, because it's natural energy that passed through it. Plain and simple. So we talk about the wireless electricity that the ancient Egyptians had. I mean, it just made more sense. And they had to run all these wires and all this stuff. They had wireless electricity that still exists today. And one of the reasons why they don't want to talk about that or put that out there is because there's energy, and there's proof that is a way to tap into the energy grid of the planet, and that the grid actually really exists, and it's possible to tap into it. So imagine if we knew it was this wireless energy field, which we know about in Kemet and other places. What would you do? Exactly what those people was doing that I showed you. They would meditate. It's one of the things I did when I was there. Went off by myself. Sat there. I wanted to feel it. I wanted to sit on pyramids and meditate, and just see how different it feel, and just be there for as long as I can stand the heat. It's an amazing thing to do. It's an amazing thing to understand what these people were able to do back then, and to just fathom how their consciousness probably was. It's something that has been so destroyed by calcified pineal gland, lack of melanin of these Europeans who don't give a shit about true spirituality. They're more worried about materialism. But, as I talked about, they are realizing in order for them to survive, they got to come back to it. They got to basically do exactly what the ancient Egyptians told them to do centuries ago. Come back into melanin in order for them to move forward. So it's what we're going to see. I think we're going to see the history books change. I think we're going to see everything that's going to promote blackness, but it's going to be a deception to it that they kind of sort of allude to in the Matrix. And, it's deep. I think I talked about it in the consciousness video, Carbon, Melanin, and the Matrix of Reincarnation. But it's something that we're going to get into. As I talked about with the Matrix movie, it was about coming back into melanin for Europeans, what they had to do. Pay attention to the whole the whole thing, as I broke down in that video. But one of the things we remember with Smith, basically coming into the real world with, coming into Zion by going through Bane. He beat Bane when Bane was trying to come back in through the phone, and, basically assimilated him, and he went back through. His consciousness went into the real body of Bane, and he infiltrated Zion. It's a lot with that when you think about the whole thing. But if you think about it, what they're going to be able to do, if you think about the struggle now, everything that we're going through, everything we've been through, the history, everything, all of this stuff having to do with the original people reclaiming their glory and everything like that. If you had control of your consciousness, you are the consciousness of the bad guy, but you are able to come in through the body of a good guy and retain your consciousness. So if you think about it with Smith coming in through Bane, he's in, a real body with that consciousness. What they're going to be able to do once they reincarnate back here or come in through this dimension is basically come in through melanin, come into a melanated body with that same consciousness and infiltrate this world to where you could possibly have the consciousness of these people or the consciousness of the ones that's basically taken over in a melanated body. So if you have a melanated body, a person with a melanated body with a different agenda, we would think it's us. So whatever that, black leader will want to march to that might be against what we want as a people, we would follow along because it's a melanated person. So basically, if it comes to the point where it seems like we won, or it seems like, everything is fine, the whole racism is gone, and everybody's basically either mixed or pure black, but it's probably a mixed person at the top who's running everything with the same agenda as the powers that be today, because it's the same people when you think about it. So something to ponder on. I can go too much deeper into that, but just think about that. All of this mixing and them coming back, and them basically still having that same mentality, not showing it 100% the way they used to, but leading us in a direction that's still not where we want to go. So basically, if we don't get somebody that's coming here that's teaching us true spirituality and leading us in a direction that the ancient Egyptians wanted us to go into, then it's probably not the route for us. Our goal would be to pick up where they left off. That's why they left the stuff in stone, for us to understand it and pick up where they left off and follow it and do what we need to do. As long as you melanated, as long as you black, you have a true sense of real spirituality. But the more you let this system corrupt you and change that energy from spiritual to materialism, then, the more you might as well be one of them. It's a unique opportunity that we have to really do something with our spirituality that has been corrupted by materialism, something that we all face, something that we all deal with, and very few people understand it and can control it. And again, that's the issue. So purpose for this video is to really get you to understand, again, the history and what these people are capable of and what they've been trying to do in the realm of destroying and disrupting your real spirituality. And one of the reasons why you're going to have problems meditating is if you're into this hip-hop. It's the same situation. So as you letting it in, and not completely being conscious of it and letting it destroy and disrupt you, which is why a lot of you are probably having dreams about stupid, random, crazy stuff, because you have no control. There's no meditation going on. You're entering into the dream world and you just having these bonkers, cattywampus ass dreams about stuff that's like, it has no point, or it's based off of a TV show or something like that. Then that's the issue. You're immersing yourself too much into this world, into this stuff. Too much materialistic not enough spirituality, and your dreams will reflect that, and you trying to meditate will show that. So it's going to take you reversing it and meditating more and watching TV less and being, caught up in that stuff, much less. I tell people, if you really want to truly get into it, I would just cut TV for a couple months. First couple months, you getting in meditation, I would cut TV down a whole lot, to basically none at all if you can, but at least cut it down a lot consciously. Understand, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to set yourself up for. Entertainment factor comes into play. People get bored. The mind is stimulated by entertainment, and a lot of people don't know how to occupy that time with something that's more spiritual. But I would take that time to meditate more and really get into the understanding of yourself, because you're programming yourself at that point, and if you're not programming yourself at that point, you're sitting in front of the TV, you're allowing it to program you, and it's going to affect you. So as I said, I could tell you 100 things about meditation that you can already look up. It's probably not true anyway. You can look up a lot of stuff that's bogus, but it's simple. It's basically simple. The key part is you. It's going to be your mind, your mindset, and how you're coming into the whole thing, and what you understand about everything that it entails to get you off of the understanding that it's not spooky, that it's something that actually works, it's not a waste of your time, and that you should really focus a lot more on it. These videos that I put out that you guys watch are truths, and that's the biggest part about it. Truth is really important. It's something you need to contemplate and dwell on and let in. Truth is important. No matter where meditation takes you at, as long as it's truth, as long as it's something that you can actually physically do and work on and deal with, that's truth. As I said, when you get into the meditative state, that's what you need to focus on: yourself, your life, on what you're trying to do and what you want to do, and what is the most possible way you can go about achieving those goals. Because that's real truth. That's not being, delusional or anything. That's not thinking about something that's like out of this world that you don't know how to do. As I said, if you don't know how to build a computer, you can't build it. You have to learn how. So you can't sit there and think about building a computer because you never learn how to. So how are you going to do it? You have to first learn how to, then you can meditate on it, and then it'll be possible. So, you can't be a millionaire if you don't know how to. How are you going to do it? Meditate on what you think you can do, what you know you should do, and do it. And then in real life, follow those steps. It's simple, it's simple. And it sounds just as simple as I'm saying it, because it really is. It's just you setting your mind to do it, you programming yourself to do it, and coming off the programming that you're programming yourself with television and everything like that, music and all that kind of stuff. It takes becoming really serious about what you're doing and watching the results. You'll see it. There's no way you can go for too long without noticing it. And one of the biggest ways it shows up is what healing your body, and two, with the focus that your mind is going to have, the clarity you're going to have, your comprehension is going to be way up. Hand-eye coordination way up. It's a lot of stuff you'll see just get a lot better, and it's due to the meditation. It's due to you focusing a lot more, because when you're in meditative state, you're concentrating, you're focusing more, consciously though. So it'll take shape, consciously as you move around and move about, and it's something that you'll pick up on and notice. So getting the knowledge of this history and this understanding was important, because now you understand a lot more clear of as I said, what these people have done, and what is it going to take from you to basically move forward with meditation. You see what they have done, the calculated destruction that has been going on for centuries by these people, due to the fact that they can't get spiritually stable, spiritually right. There's something off about it. And when you're dealing with a mindset like that, we got to be on point. It's like being controlled by a psycho, having a crazy boss, and that you got to go to work every day. You can't quit your job. You need it. You got to figure something out. And we've been doing that for a long time. And they put themselves on a different stage. And that kind of gave us the opportunity to do something, because now they're coming out on this stage of, we ain't the bad guys, but we're doing this right. We're trying to help you guys. We're peaceful people, and history has not shown that. So now that they plan this game, and it's this big facade going on to where, they trying to murder us and destroy us and basically destroy us spiritually, publicly, without people being conscious of it. Because it's crazy to me how they could be putting the stuff that they're putting in the foods, in the water, and then just be sitting there like, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? And this is how they do it. They break off in these different groups where you have all these different companies and corporations that can do stuff and say they're separate from the ruling class, but it's really them, that's doing it. So they can go ahead and poison the water and say, it wasn't us, the water department or water people. You can have cops kill us and say it wasn't us. It's cops, police. We can't really do nothing about that. That's at a state or local level. But really, it's orders from, on high. And it's stuff that they've been doing for a long time. But, we got to learn how to play that to our advantage. And figure out a way to work around it, actually. But, dealing with this real world is the only way you're going to really get into any true, real meditation. Understanding what's happening, the history behind it, and why it all makes sense for you to really be more into meditation and what these people were about, for centuries. So having that knowledge and understanding within you now makes it more easy for you to understand, makes it more, makes it less spookier that it's something to meditation. And a lot of people say, well, I believe in it and I don't think it's spooky, but deep down somewhere you don't comprehend fully. And when you comprehend fully, it makes you're more free. You get it now, you understand, and you begin to understand the importance of it. But that connection is something that we got to work on as far as getting, the energy, Kundalini energy, positioned correctly so that you are healed energetically, spiritually, and that you can move on to different stages of meditation that's going to help you connect back to the planet's energy and do some amazing things eventually. And believe it or not, every time you go to sleep, you reconnect back with this energy. Every time. It boosts your subconsciousness a millionfold, which is why the dream state is projected so strong. When you sleep, it's that full strength of the energy taking you out, as we simply leave the body. It happens. What you're trying to do happens every night you go to sleep. That's the proof right there. Every night you go to sleep. It happens because your subconscious takes over. That has the power. Consciously, you're out of control. So now your subconscious can do what? As I said, you want to connect. So what? You can be healed. But what does your subconscious do when you go to sleep? It takes you there because you can't take yourself. If it didn't, you would die. Your subconscious makes that connection to the planet. You are healed. You are recharged every morning that you wake up because that connection happens. And you go out there. And it's an infinite world that your subconscious have to expand and create and do so many different things to try to teach you what you need to do. But if it's bombarded, your consciousness, by television in this world, mainstream, everything that's going on, this is what you're going to have. And you'll have your subconscious trying to talk to you and show this stuff to you so you can deal with it and move on. And eventually be back in a body. But it happens every night. Every night you go to sleep. That connection. And you're there and not even conscious of it. So with meditation, understanding the more time, you'll have control over that. And eventually, you'll begin to understand how real this stuff is, and you'll be more focused on becoming, more stronger in meditation. But, definitely want to get into a lot more in part 4 of this series, but I really encourage you guys to definitely take a look at the ancient history series, the new one that's coming up. It's really a lot into that series that a lot of people will want to know and understand. But I want to thank you guys for taking the time to purchase and support, and see you guys next video.